All right, hi guys. So we're going to do a quick review on how to do order of operations problems. If you remember, there was a poster in the classroom that had a set of letters, and we used that as a mnemonic device to remember how to do order of operations. A mnemonic device is just something that's easier for us to remember, that it helps us remember something a little more difficult. So these are the steps of an order of operation problem. So these are the first thing we look for is parentheses, and then I drew some different kinds of parentheses, braces, or brackets. And then the next thing we look for is our exponents, and remember that's when we have our normal size number, a big number, and then there's this little number above it, and what that means is whatever this little number is, we're going to multiply this number by itself that number of times. So this one is 2, and the exponent is also 2, so that means we're doing 2 times 2. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit. The next thing is multiplication and division, and we do those two together, so we do them at the same time. So when we do, what I mean when I say we do those together is that we look for multiplication and division at the same time. So if we have a problem that has both of those, we're going to do them from left to right. Okay, so we'll talk about that. We'll do a couple of practice problems, and then same with addition and subtraction. So that same thing, they are basically on the same level. I tried to color code these on here. It's kind of hard to see, might be kind of hard to see the colors, but parentheses I underlined in red, exponents is underlined in orange, multiplication and division are both underlined in green because we do those at the same time, and then addition and subtraction are also underlined in green, which means we do them at the same time. So our mnemonic device is "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Okay, so that's what we use to remember how the order goes for when we're doing these problems. So we are just going to do a couple of practice problems. So the first one we're going to do is going to be 3 times 2 plus 6 divided by 3. And I keep looking down because I have my set of problems right below the camera. So the first thing I did up here, which I did before this, was I wrote out PEMDAS, and I wrote that out to remind myself that that is the order in which I'm going to do this problem. So the first thing I'm going to look for are P for parentheses, or please, and I'm going to see if there's any parentheses in here. There are no parentheses. So that means I get to skip that, and I get to move on to the next thing, which are exponents. So look and see if there's any exponents, which are right here. I don't have any in this problem, so we get to skip that too. So now we get to look for multiplication and division. And actually what I'm going to do to make this easier to see, I'm going to put a line under multiplication and division and a line under addition and subtraction. I'm doing that to remind myself that I'm going to do multiplication and division at the same time, and then I'm going to look at addition and subtraction. So we're going to look at multiplication and division right now. So when I look at this problem, I see that I have a multiplication sign here and a division sign here. So what I remember about order of operations is when I do those together, I'm going from left to right. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to look this way when I do these problems. So the first multiplication or division sign that I see is right here. And so I'm going to do this right here first. So I have 3 times 2, which is 6. And then I'm just going to write out the rest of the problem, because that's going to keep my numbers straight. That's going to help me make sure I don't miss a number while I'm doing this problem. It's just a good habit to get into when you're doing these kinds of problems. So now I've done my multiplication, that was first, and now the next thing is I have a division symbol right here. So now I'm going to do 6 divided by 3, or how many times does 3 go into 6? So I know that 3 goes into 6 2 times. So I'm going to turn this into a 2, and then I'm going to write the rest of my problem again. So now all I have is addition. So now my new problem is just going to be 6 plus 2. So 6 plus 2 is 8. So that's how we do that one. So, like I said, I did this step by step, and I just brought the problem down as I went, and it's just a really good habit to get into so you can keep your numbers straight. So, the next one we are going to do is going to have some parentheses and an exponent in it. So, that is going to be 2 times 2, and then there's an exponent here, which is also a 2, plus, and then in parentheses, 4 minus 2. So I'm going to look at my PEMDAS again, and I'm going to see which one goes first. So I know that parentheses have to come first. Okay, so I do have parentheses, so I'm going to do this first. What's inside the parentheses is 4 minus 2. So 4 minus 2 is 2. And I'm just going to write the rest of the problem, which was 2 times, and when you say this with an exponent, I would say 2 to the second power, or 2 squared. When it's, yeah, so I'm going to say 2 to the second power. So now, this problem I ended up having a bunch of 2's. So I now have 2 times 2 to the second power plus 2. So I did my parentheses, now I'm going to look for an exponent. So, I said we were going to do an exponent. So this one is 2 to the second power, which means I'm multiplying 2 times itself. So this is going to be 2 times 2. Okay? So this is going to turn into a 4. And then we're just going to bring the rest of the problem down. So now I go to my multiplication and division. And I do see some multiplication here. So we're going to do 2 times 4, which is 8. And then I bring this down. 8 plus 2 is, I have to bring this over here because I ran out of room. 8 plus 2 is 10. So, I did my parentheses, and then I did my exponent, which that's what this means right here. And then I did my multiplication, and then I did my addition. Okay, so our next one is 6 plus 2 to the second power, so we already know we have another exponent, minus, then I have parentheses, 3 plus 2. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at is parentheses. So I look right here, and I know that I have inside my parentheses it says 3 plus 2, which is 5. And then I'm going to write the rest of my problem again so I can make sure I'm keeping all of my numbers straight. So now my problem says 6 plus 2 to the second power minus 5. So what's the next thing we do in PEMDAS? Exponents. So now, same thing as the last problem that we did. We have 2 to the second power, so I have to think about 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. And I'm going to write the rest of my problem around it so I can make sure I'm keeping this straight. So now, next thing we're going to do is multiplication and division, but we don't have any, so we get to skip that. So next thing we do is addition and subtraction. So we do that from left to right. So the first one on the left is an addition problem. So we have 6 plus 4. So 6 plus 4 is 10. And then I'm going to write the rest of my problem. So now the last thing I have to do is subtraction. So I have 10 minus 5. So 10 minus 5 is 5. Okay, so we just have 2 more. Okay, so this next one, it has 2 sets of parentheses. So we'll see what we're going to do with that one. So the next one is 2 times 4 plus 3 in parentheses minus, in parentheses, 2 plus 1 times 4. Whew. That's a lot of numbers. So, the first thing I'm going to do is look at my parentheses. And so when we have two sets of parentheses, I'm going to do both of those on the same line. Just because they aren't right next to each other, and then we're going to write the rest of the problem. So I'm going to look at this one first. So it's 4 plus 3. So 4 plus 3 is 7. And then over here I have 2 plus 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So then I'm going to write the rest of my problem out here. So this problem is turning into 2 times 7 minus 3 times 4. Okay, so then we did our parentheses. We don't have any exponents, so the next thing we do is multiplication and division. So I see two multiplication problems, and I am going to do those from left to right. So my first one is 2 times 7. So 2 times 7 is 14. And then I go over here and I have 3 times 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. And then I just have to make sure I bring down my sign because I don't have any other numbers to add in here. So my new problem is 14 minus 12. So 14 minus 12 is 2. Okay, so we're looking at this whole big problem with all of these numbers, and it ends up being 2 because of the way that we did it. So let's do one more. I have a feeling this one is going to be a tricky one. So let's do 2 plus, and this is a bracket. This is a brace, actually. This is not a parenthesis, but inside my brace, there's going to be a parenthesis. We'll see what we're going to do with that. 6 times 3 divided by 3 plus 2. So I have 2 plus, and then inside my brackets I have 6 times 3 in parentheses divided by 3, and then on the outside of my brackets on this side I have plus 2. So the first thing we're going to do is look at our parentheses. But we have two sets of parentheses, right? So we're going to go all the way inside. So we're going to look at 6 times 3. So 6 times 3 is 18. And I'm going to leave this in parentheses for a minute. And then I'm going to rewrite this. So I just rewrote the whole problem after I did that one piece, just so I make sure that I keep all of my numbers in there. Since we haven't dealt with brackets or braces a lot, I'm just doing this so I make sure I'm on the right track here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're still inside these brackets, which fall under our parentheses symbol in our order of operations. So I have 18 divided by 3. So how many times does 3 go into 18? 6. So then we just have 6. So now I just have to add the rest of my problem in here. So now my problem ends up being 2 plus 6 plus 2. So I'm going to do that from left to right. So 2 plus 6 is 8 plus 2. 8 plus 2 is, I'm going to write it over here, 10. Okay, so when we're doing these kinds of problems, we just have to make sure that we are using our order of operations. And always remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And one of the biggest things to remember is that multiplication and division are together, and you do them from left to right, and that addition and subtraction are together, and you do those from left to right. So if you have any questions, or you just want to talk, have an idea, or want to ask about a specific question that you came up with, or a specific problem, get a hold of Mrs. Ledbetter or myself, and we can talk about it. Okay, I miss you guys. I hope you're at least having a little bit of fun, and I look forward to talking to you soon.